Hey good people, Dr. Lund here. Today was the beginning of Gwyneth Paltrow's skiing collision trial. Now, to be clear, I really wasn't interested in this trial at first. I don't know much about Gwyneth Paltrow. I've seen a couple of her movies. I know she owns the company Goop, and there's been a lot of controversy around it. But the one thing that I do know is that she, at one time, and maybe still, had been voted the most hated actress in America. I think Amber Heard took that spot. But nonetheless, regardless if you love her or if you hate her, she is very polarizing. And so what I did is I watched today's opening statements, looking at it in a more psychological viewpoint. This is not legal analysis. This is more psychological of how I felt about some of the players and the characters and how they came across, and especially watching Gwyneth during the times when she was shown during the trial. And so let me get into it and tell you what I saw. Here's just a brief background on this lawsuit. A retired Utah optometrist, Terry Sanderson, brought a suit against Gwyneth Paltrow for a skiing accident which he claims that Paltrow collided with him, causing him brain damage and problems related to the brain damage in February of 2016 in Park City, Utah. First of all, in opening statements, interestingly, most of the opening statement that I remember was really from Paltrow's attorney, who I thought was sarcastic, seemed rather elitist, knowingly broke some rules of how to do an opening statement, was somewhat belligerent to the opposing attorney about all the objections that the attorney made, which appeared to be appropriate. Again, I'm not an attorney, but my first thought was it's interesting that Gwyneth is looked at as being elitist, somebody that can't relate to normal people because she's been entitled, she's born into wealth, she's a celebrity, and carries an attitude that doesn't really rub some people the right way. And it seemed like her attorney was sort of the epitome of that. Not that he didn't have some good points, but that was the first thing that, again, I noticed about him, was he seemed to be just overly aggressive at this point in time for really no reason. Just my opinion. One of the issues that they brought up was Terry Sanderson, the man who was bringing the suit, was not going to be in the courtroom during the opening statements or for some of the testimony by witnesses because his attorney stated that he didn't want to, quote, rub in his nose some of his deficits since the accident related to the concussion and the brain injury. People have different opinions about that, but I've worked with many people with traumatic brain injuries. And what happens with some is their emotions become dysregulated, which means that they can become angry very quickly, fly off the handle quickly, say things that they wouldn't have said before the injury that caused the brain injury. And so that may be a part of it as well, too. There have even people who've gotten violent that never were violent before their brain injuries, and with the personality change, the cognitive changes, there can be significant emotional changes, and at times, as I said, that can sort of be part of the dysregulation, which means they have poor impulse control and cannot regulate their emotions appropriately. So I didn't find that as, I don't know, as controversial as maybe some other people had found it, where some folks on other YouTube channels thought he should be in that courtroom. That may have been, again, for his own protection, so something didn't trigger or set him off where there would have been some kind of emotional explosion. The first witness in the case, Mr. Ramone, was on the stand for, it seemed like a long time. I'm sure it seemed like forever for this gentleman. You could tell he was nervous over a period of time, especially during cross-examination. His face got redder. He was looking kind of sweaty. He wasn't listening to the questions. It's almost like if you ever had circuit overload, you are in a very stressful situation. You have somebody pretty aggressive and combative coming at you, and you're not able to listen. It's almost like you feel like you're underwater. And so he was answering questions or sort of becoming defensive about questions that weren't asked, and it really showed in a couple of his responses that he was answering something that Gwyneth's attorney didn't ask him. And you could tell the attorney was getting frustrated as well, too, even to the point that they had to have one of Gwyneth's other attorney stand by Mr. Ramone with the paper deposition to help him find the lines that the attorney was referring to with those questions, because it seemed like Mr. Ramone was just getting lost. You could tell he was getting really overwhelmed. And I have to admit, I felt for him. He doesn't have really a dog in this fight. He was there at the wrong time, the wrong place, saw what happened, and I think that seems to be something common, is that when you're working on a case, oftentimes I don't know how well some attorneys prep witnesses so that they understand that the opposing attorney is going to discredit them with any discrepancy. It doesn't matter if it's a big discrepancy or a small discrepancy, that they will start chipping away at those, and you can really see people unravel, even though maybe the bulk, the meat of the testimony is totally appropriate and on target. But once they start chipping at, okay, you said 10 minutes, now you're saying 8 minutes. Now you said this, and it was that. And so you can see people start to unravel, and some unfortunately try to go toe-to-toe with that type of attorney, and it's usually a bad idea. It just doesn't work. So by the time I think this man was able to get off the stand, he was really, had tied himself up kind of in pretzels. Do I think he discredited himself? One, on some level, there were discrepancies, yes. But what I heard underneath all of this back and forth, and help him find the line, and what page is this, and it's like, are you reading the document? Again, some of those things, they just really feed into the intimidation of a witness. I felt for him. You could see him flounder, and by the end of it, I'm not sure he even knew what his name was. And again, all he's doing is he's testifying as to what he saw. But probably the biggest issue is that, oh, when you've been deposed, there are so many folks that kind of go into court cold. They don't look over their deposition from previous, and his was, I think, previous couple of years ago, maybe. And it sounded like it was very long. It lasted 7.5 hours. Oh my gosh, 7.5 hours is a long time to be grilled. I can't imagine what that was like during the deposition, to see him really sort of turn into kind of a puddle of water during cross-examination. I felt for him, but I think he tried to stick to his points, but there were times, obviously, he wasn't hearing what was said, and certain explanations about color blindness. There was the attorney tried to allude to the fact that if he was colorblind, then he couldn't tell who was who, or in that scenario. Well, there's people walking around, men walking around who have, some have the trait and are the ones who will have the trait for color blindness. They can see colors. They may not be able to see different shades of greens or reds or whatever, or some colors they can see and some colors just look more muted to them. So that's just because you're color. I mean, people drive with color blindness. They walk, they talk, they work. And I think his statement about Mr. Ramone's statement when he said, "I get dyslexic when I get nervous." I think what he was really trying to say is, I'm overwhelmed. I can't see the writing on the page. I know there have been times when I've been stressed. I don't know about you all, but if I am so stressed, I'm looking at the words on the paper, but I'm not actually reading them or comprehending them or comprending. Comprendo. So I get it, and I felt for him. The second witness of the day was Carlene Davidson, who actually dated Terry Sanderson, the plaintiff, for around 18 months before the skiing accident. She, I thought, was very honest, very credible, very human. I felt for her. You could tell, and she talked about being heartbroken from the personality change before the accident to after the accident, where he became more withdrawn, didn't talk to her as much, showed changes in temper, patience, tolerance, some personality changes that were significant, and she felt that he was pushing her away. And so subsequently, a relationship she seemed to be very invested in had dissolved, sounding like because of the changes in Mr. Sanderson's personality changes. Again, very possible, probable, related to the traumatic brain injury that he sustained. She, again, I thought she really was very, very credible and very honest and very open. And what I thought was a really good strategy is on Gwyneth's side, they had a younger male attorney ask her questions on cross-examination, who was very kind, very respectful, even supportive, when she talked about that the relationship had dissolved. and that she wasn't good at relationships. And he had said, oh, he was sorry to hear that. And in my opinion, and this is just me, you can get a whole lot of information from people with this attorney style than you can with the bulldozing intimidator. That may work for some other specific people, but I think when you got to play this legal game, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, but having been an expert witness and deposed and gone to trial as an expert witness, it wasn't fun. There are strategies that sometimes have very little to do with the information, but it's like a game of chess. And if you're not accustomed to that or ready for that, like I said, if they would have had that bulldozer cross-examine Carlene, I think she would have absolutely just dissolved. Because you could tell that she was very affected by what she had gone through during the relationship, being very happy with the potential that they were going to be maybe married, to the point after the accident, everything was different, everything changed. So I thought that was a great strategy, having the younger attorney be so kind and passionate and human, and actually got her to admit to some things that maybe the plaintiff's attorneys might not have been thrilled about, because he was so kind to her. And she obviously had nothing to hide. She was just telling the court her observations and the changes and how it affected her life, which I thought, again, she did an awesome job doing that, and it was very heartfelt. And if I was a juror, everything she said, my heart would go out to her, that I believed everything that she had told the court. Oh, and don't forget, Carlene actually went to therapy after this experience, again thinking that maybe she had done something wrong in this relationship to cause the shift and to cause it not to be successful. And she readily admitted that. I thought that was really quite brave of her to do. Okay, just a couple of additional things is, I think that Gwyneth and her attorney came in just at the last minute, right as court was starting. And the attorney then looked like he introduced her, like, this is Gwyneth Paltrow. I thought that was bizarre. I have never seen an attorney introduce his client to the court. That seemed a little bit of a fan thing. She's a celebrity. I'm a fan of hers. That seemed odd. That really actually seemed inappropriate. And I thought also during his opening statement, talking about her day that was ruined because of this collision, and that they had bought a ticket for a whole day, and then she had to go lay down for the rest of the day. For somebody who has a bad reputation and and needs a new publicist to deal with it, I think that bad afternoon doesn't compare to somebody who had sustained a TBI. And here's the rub of it. It doesn't matter who caused the collision. The outcome still is the same, whoever wins and loses as they walk out of court in a couple of weeks, that this man sustained a TBI. And I think comparing a bad afternoon to a total change in this man's life, and let me tell you, it doesn't matter that he was in his early 70s when this happened. This man was vibrant, he was intelligent, he was active. It's not okay that somebody suffers such a dramatic change in status because they're in their 70s. No, not that I'm in my 70s yet, but no, that's not acceptable. So I thought that comparison was really bad. Here are a couple of my takeaways going forward is one, I hope they get somebody good to talk about what a TBI is, a traumatic brain injury. What are the symptoms? How do you get it? And that you don't have to be unconscious to have it. You can seem like you're fine right after an injury or an accident, and because of things called shearing in the brain, you can have symptoms weeks, sometimes months after an accident. And I think the jury needs to understand some of the more medical issues that they may not have a background on, even though I understand, I think there's a nurse on the jury. But again, not all nurses deal with TBIs. I hope her attorney pulls back. I think it's ineffective. I think, if anything, it's reflective of her bad reputation, whether it's warranted or not. But the elitist, the I'm special, annoying, intimidating, that just seems like this isn't the trial for it. Maybe in some other case, but not this one. As far as I understand, Gwyneth will be called to the stand either tomorrow, which is Wednesday, or possibly the next day. It sounds like it'll be sometime this week. So I will wait, since all I did was see little shots of her now and then as the proceedings were going on, and you really can't make any kind of a analysis, a psychological analysis from just seeing her sit and look different ways and different views. But I definitely will do one after her testimony, just to give you a sense psychologically of what I see and what I hear and what I feel. So I appreciate you all watching this. I hope that you will watch along with me. And if you are new to the channel, I would appreciate if you would like and subscribe. And if you are already a subscriber, I hope you like the video and leave me your comments, your observations, and your thoughts as well too. And so I will see you at the next one. Bye.